Welcome back to 3D animation, and today we're going to talk a bit about animating your camera and some different techniques for animating your camera, from just using a standard camera to a camera with an aim and animating that, to working with a motion path and some of the little intricacies that can happen with that. So let's get started. I just created a simple little creature here. We're not going to do anything with an environment in this one. We're just going to stick with kind of like moving around this creature and showing it off. It's my little purple squid, or some kind of little robot squid, or who knows what. So first thing we want to do is create a camera. So you can either go to Panels and Perspective and hit the New button, and that'll create just a generic camera. Or where I like to go is go to Create Cameras and then choose what type of camera you want. So today we'll go over the camera and aim. So if I just choose a generic camera, obviously now I have a new camera. Aside from my perspective camera, I have an actual camera that I can animate. And so, we want to not try to animate the perspective camera because you need to be able to view both, right? So like what I like to do is go to 4-way view at this point and then take one of my views that I don't use very much, like maybe my side view. I usually want my front and my top, and then I'll go to Panel and change that to the new camera. It's camera 1 right now. But we could also change the name of that camera. We could call it like animated camera, right? And hit return over there in the attributes panel. And then when I come back to panels here, I can say choose. Well, it's still saying camera 1. I guess it wasn't updated yet, but it will be soon enough. And then we can actually see the camera. And you can see as I zoom out that camera, it's actually moving the camera. Or as I have it selected, I could go to its translate controls and move it this way. And you're going to see what it looks like as I move that camera back, right? Which looks kind of cool. It's like I'm starting it on the tentacles and moving out. You can see it in the top view as well, and somewhat in the side view. Or I'm sorry, in the front view, but it's not moving a whole lot in the front view because it's just, that's the perspective. But maybe I want to move it up a little bit to see kind of more in the center of the camera. Like if I see there it's in the center. And it's really easy, I could start like way out here. Let me zoom out on it. And just like I would with any animation, I can go to my timeline down here, and as the camera is set, I can hit the S key, and I can set a keyframe. And then I can bring it way in. Oops, sorry, I should have moved my keyframes first. I can move out to, say, like frame 40, and move way in on it, and hit another S. And if I animate that, and hit play, it doesn't exactly like, I don't know why it's not showing it to me in the viewport. I'm just not getting a very lot. There we go. I just couldn't have it with all 4. For some reason, it wasn't previewing well. But there you can see, very easy, very linear, straightforward, and go in. Now, if I go to Animation, my animation panel for Workspace, and I bring up the graph editor, then we're going to want to click on the camera again. And now we can see how it's moving. Right now it's just moving on the, I believe we are only on the Z translate plane. And you can see it's a pretty smooth, like starts out smooth, ends pretty smooth. But that's where I could come in here and I could play around with this a bit. I could have it really just start out a little bit faster and then come to a nice longer smooth transition here. So let's go back up here and go to the actual camera view. I actually had a little wobble at the end. You can see how it like bounces back because I think I actually dipped below the line there for a second. Yeah, so see how I kind of dip because I made that curve a little too extreme. So let's change the overall length of our animation. Let's make this about 1,000 frame. I'm sorry, 1,000. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom out and move this so it's a little bit slower. Let's drag this all the way out to, say, I don't know, let's go. And let's show 200 frames in this view. And let's go ahead and adjust this curve so that it's not quite so extreme. We don't want it to dip under. We just want it to come down to a nice, smooth curve at the end of the day. We'll come back to the beginning here. And or actually I think inside it. We went a little bit too far with the camera on that one. And so let's go back out and take a look. So maybe we come back to this guy, and instead of going that far into him, we hit S and stop right there. Whoop, I was in the wrong spot. Let's go all the way to the previous. Sorry, I zoomed out a little too much on that one, guys. Let's move this back to roughly here. And we'll zoom that out so it stops right about there. And reset that keyframe. Cool. And adjust the curve accordingly. There we go. Let's see how that looks. There we go. A little longer, a little smoother. So, very easy, just like controlling any object, very easy to get started with your animation of a camera. Okay, so now let's take a look at a different type of camera called a camera with an aim. So I'm going to delete this camera, and we're going to go back out just to our regular kind of classic workspace. Go back to my four-way view. And you'll see I'm back on like a default perspective camera now down here. Okay, so we're going to go back up to Create, and Cameras, and Camera with an Aim. And so what you get with a camera with an aim is you get a little group here, a camera group, and inside is the camera, and then you have an aim. And what's great about it, I'll change this view here to the camera 1 view just so you can kind of see. No matter where I point the camera, it's going to look at the aim. So first of all, let's move that aim a little bit so that it's more like in the center of our creature. Whoop, went off a little bit there. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that in the camera view. Let me go ahead and move that to the center. Kind of move it upward so it's kind of looking right at the middle of it, okay? Now, no matter where I move this camera in space, it's always going to look at the aim. And it's automatically going to tilt and shift no matter what I do. It's really handy for learning how to animate your camera because I can animate it from all these different points, and it's always going to keep my eye on the aim. And the aim can be animated as well if we want to go to a different point at some point. So right now, like I said, we've got the aim right in the middle. If I want to start animating things, I can take my camera here, and I can go to my first frame. And I can go ahead and set a keyframe. And then I can move out to, say, 60, and move my camera way out here, and hit S again. Sorry, I have to go to a single view for you to be able to preview it for some reason on my computer today. But there you go. You can preview that motion as it goes way out to the distance. So, way easier, in my opinion, when you're starting out to use a camera and aim, particularly on single objects, whatever you want to do. But, you know, maybe I have 2 of these. So I'm going to duplicate it and move this guy over here. And maybe now I'm going to go ahead back to my camera. And looks like I was right around frame 60, right? So let's go ahead and set a keyframe on the aim. So I'm going to set a keyframe on the aim. And then, just so I can see where that aim is going, then I'm going to go out to like frame 120. And I'm going to move my aim so that it's now on the other creature, right? And I'm going to hit S again. And let's go ahead and see what happens. So I'm going to go to the beginning of my animation here, zoom around, and then my focus is going to go there, right? And if I want to add a little extra to that, once I get to the final view there, so let's see, the camera aim was right about here at 120. I can come back to my camera, set another keyframe, and then come out to like 180. And let's zoom in very nicely and drop it down and set. And let's see what that looks like. So pretty amazing, you know, very simply, very quickly, you can start to get a complex camera movement going on where I'm doing a fly around, Then I'm shifting my focus of the aim to another object, and then I'm zooming in on that one. So really, really simple stuff. It's amazing how just the combination of animating the aim and the camera can give you all this control. And if I go back to my animation workspace, I can look at see what these look like. So my camera, here's its motion paths that are going on. I'm obviously moving in X, Y, and Z a bit. There's that plateau in the middle where it stays and then it moves on to the other area. And then if I click on the aim, again, I have an X. The Y pretty much stays flat on the aim and a Z. So I have an X and a Z positioning. So again, I could come in here and do all of my individual keyframe controls with their tangents and whatnot if I want to smooth things out or speed things up or add more linear or more organic flow to it. So let's see. The last one I want to show you is I want to show you how to do a camera along a motion path. So again, I'm going to delete this group. And let's just go back out to the classic view again. And we're going to go ahead and this time I'm going to go from above here. I'm going to draw in. Let me actually get rid of this second guy here. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and draw a motion path that the camera can follow around, right? So I'm going to go to my curves. I'm just going to grab my first just EP curve tool. And I'm going to start like way out here. I'm going to circle around. And I'm going to end right there, nice and close, right? And so I'm going to be able to make this camera follow this curve. If for some reason you want to add more points or you want to smooth that out, at any point you can go to curves and you can choose this rebuild option. And I can say instead of 4 spans like I have right now, I could say 10 and rebuild. And you can see it kind of added some smoothness to that curve. So just a nice little tool to know that's happening there. So now that I have my curve, I'm going to click off of it. It's important that you select, create a camera, and then select it and then the motion path that you want it to attach to. So I'm going to go back to create and choose just a regular camera. Unfortunately, camera and aim does not work with the motion paths. There's a more advanced workaround on that. I'm not going to go over it today, but it takes a little bit of scripting to make that work. But for right now, we're going to get a regular camera. So I'm going to select the camera. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and select the curve. And then I am going to go back to my animation panel up here because you have to be able to pull up this constrain panel, which is under animation. I'm going to go to that. I'm going to go to motion paths and attach to motion path. But I want to bring up this little control here, the box on it, so we can get all of its options. So right off the bat, we can decide, is it going to run the full length of my animation, which right now I think I have 1,000 frames in here. So if I just leave it on time slider, it's going to make it so that it takes the full 1,000 frames for this camera to go down the path. If I want to constrain that, I can set the start and end. So I can have it start on frame 1 and end on frame 30. For this case, let's do like frame 200. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and apply it. Okay, and I'm going to close that window. So right off the bat, now I have, you can see in my editor here, in my graph editor, I have a camera that's now following from frames 1 to frame 200 around the path. If we look at this in all 4-way views, you're going to be able to see this a little bit better. So let me grab the camera again, and there it goes all the way around. Cool. Sorry, I'm not getting like a live view in all 4. For some reason, my graphics card's having some issues today getting all the way around. So here we go, and we can flow all the way around. So the problem you'll see, though, especially if I have one of these set up as the camera view, so I'm going to set this guy up to actually show us camera 1, is that it's never showing our object. And why is that? Because if you look, the camera's actually pointed away from the object right now. So that's one of the things we need to check. So one of the things you can do is once you have the camera selected, go to your attributes, click on motion path. This is sort of like a little invisible parameter that's part of the camera now because we added it to a motion path. And right away we can decide kind of like the orientation of the camera. We can say, well, what happens if I choose the up axis to Y? Well, then it reverses the camera. So now it's kind of like upside down. We don't want that. So let's bring that back up to X. If you brought it to Z, That's maybe a little bit better, but it's facing backwards now. So as it goes, you can see it's kind of like almost going backwards. Maybe at the very end we would see the object. Even then, I don't think we're seeing it. We're kind of pointing away from it the whole time. But we're getting better. Now, at least on the, if we go with the up axis, this would actually make it turn sideways. Or if we go to Z, again, it's kind of going backwards. This right now, X, is on its side. Y, it's straight up again. So I'm going to go with the Y on that one. And then I'm going to go ahead and invert the front. And now you can see the camera is actually facing forward on the path and is going to follow the path forward. So now, we're not going to see it for a little while, but now as we come in, there we go, we start to come into frame. And we're going to zoom right in on those tentacles. So you can get it to follow this motion path. This works really well when you're doing like a flyby through a city. It's a little tougher right now because just the view is a little bit off. So if I go to my curve and I right click on it and choose control vertexes, I could try to like adjust my curve now so that like earlier on in the path we can actually like see our object. There we go. I can make it so that he like curves by the object a little bit more. So obviously your camera view is only as good as the path view is, right? So keep that in mind when you're laying out that path. I just kind of did it arbitrarily, so now I have to kind of go back and adjust it so that we can actually see some elements as we're flying by, right? I could also make my camera just a little wider, get kind of my a little wider aspect ratio so that as I am zooming through, I can kind of see it the whole time. So there we go. That's a little bit better. Now as I'm zooming through, we go around it. And eventually we kind of come back to it. So, you got to control the path and make sure that your camera is in view as it's going. But it can be a really cool, complex way to do these like more intricate motions, like, as we're moving around. Let's bring that back up a little bit. There we go. So you can get a pretty interesting flyby effect as the camera is moving along this path. There we go. Now we're starting to come around it again. And as it comes to the end, it zooms in very nicely right into the tentacles there. It'd be kind of cool to do like a little fly through the tentacles with this and tighten the whole thing up a little bit. So lots of possibilities on how you can do this. And just to go back to the camera and the controls on the motion path, remember that was by adjusting these axes, going to the front z-axis and then inverting the front. If I invert the up, it's going to make the camera go upside down. We don't want that right now, although maybe you do at some point. You can also play around with the twists and do all sorts of things like that as well. So lots of possibilities here of what you want to do following a path. You can also adjust the value here that you're seeing is, there's keyframes here, and it's pink because there is a keyframe. When it's 0, it's at the start of the path, and when it's 1, it's at the end of the path. So as I get to about the halfway point, you see it's like 0.42, right? So I could have my path, select the path, and then just hit S, and I can add a keyframe there in the middle. And then I would be able to like adjust the timing of this whole thing too. Like I could have it slower at the beginning and faster at the end. Or I could come in here and say, okay, so that's a 0.41 value. And then I could come over and add another keyframe. And then I could change that to 0.41. If I wanted it to pause for a second. So I could actually have it like plateau for a second there and then continue on again. So lots of ways that you can kind of play with this as you go along and get exactly what you're looking for out of your animation. So keep playing around. These U values allow you to kind of control where it is along that path and the timing of that. You can also play around with these twist values, which are going to do different things as well along the way. I haven't tried a front twist, but let's see like 0.5. Oh, that made the kind of like tail end of it twist a little bit as it came around. So you can just kind of play with the value of how that camera is moving around the various curves. So there's a couple of ways that we can work. And one other last trick I want to show you, I'm going to go ahead and remove this camera with the path, is how to do an in-camera cut. A better way to do this is in post. My recommendation is, like, for each different camera angle that you want, just save out another Maya version or another Maya file. So camera 1 is maybe a close-up shot that moves, left to right a little bit. That's just one little like edited scene. Export it as an image sequence, bring it into After Effects. Then maybe your next shot is a far-off shot that starts like very far away and then zooms in. Animate that camera, save it as, your file name version 2 or camera shot 2. Export that as an image sequence. Bring in the separate image sequences into After Effects and then edit them together. However, if you want to, you can also just go ahead and create a cut shot inside of Maya. So an easy way to do this is it's just kind of a little workaround, but if I create a camera, I'm going to do one with an aim, just so I can keep my target in here pretty well. So I'm going to make the target right in the center there. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my camera. I'm going to move them out here. All right. So let's go ahead and change this view so I can actually see through the camera. And go to frame 1. So I'm going to set a keyframe. Whoop, I was on the wrong one. Set a keyframe for the camera. And then I'm going to move out to frame 60. And then I'll zoom in and set another keyframe. Now, if I want to do a cut, it's interesting way to do this is that I can just go to frame 61 and go to a completely different shot, right? So I could go like way over here and hit set. And in reality, what we're going to end up getting is, there's my zoom in, and then cut, I'm out. And then from there, I can do another animation where maybe I zoom in, but I'm like coming from above, right? And set a keyframe there. So I'm zooming in my first shot, and then cut, and then back out again, right? And so it's just an easy way to do that. If you want to, you could pause for a second too. We could try to interject an extra couple of frames in here. So the value on that one, it looks like, is 4 point, well, let's just get that. Let's actually move that back because I was in a few different positions. So either way, you could just set another keyframe. I'm going to go ahead and back up just a little bit before I did those other shots. And so if I wanted to, I could just be from this shot, set another keyframe. So I had a little plateau for a few seconds, and then do my cut. So I don't have just such a hard cut. So now, let's see, that's frame 70. I'll go to frame 71. And this is where maybe I would zoom out and come from above, set a keyframe, and then zoom in down here and set another. And so now I have zoom in, pause, cut from above, and come back down again. And maybe I want to lengthen that out a little bit. So zoom in, pause, cut from above, and then come back down again. And it looks like a totally different camera shot, but really we just paused for a second and then did that little one frame jump so it's not visible to the human eye, and allows you to do an in-camera cut. Like I said, I think it's better to do separate scenes. A, you have more control in After Effects between the transitions, and B, so that your entire animation is an all-in-one Maya file. Just in case you're rendering this whole thing out and your system crashes, it also allows you to take advantage of multiple computers in the lab. So you put one scene on one and another scene on the other, render them out, and then bring them into After Effects. All right, everyone, that is my lesson for how to animate a camera. Let me know if you have any questions, and as always, thanks for tuning in.